What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ron Line Report. Today's guest, I should have talked to this guy years and years and years ago, but finally here I am. He was a champion bodybuilder, champion powerlifter. Now he's known as one of the best coaches in the game. Coach is a guy you might have heard of named Brandon Curry. Please welcome Justin Troponin Harris.
Glad to be here. I don't think we've ever met, have we? I mean, we've talked on the boards and stuff for, talking, but we've messaged back and forth or we're on same discussions for 25 years, but I don't think we've ever actually met in person.
Yeah, were you on the Muscle Mayhem board way back in the
day?
Yeah.
It's on October 2002. Because I remember I knew someone who was telling me about, because he knew, I followed every coach. There were no coaches at the time. I think there wasn't an online coach because there was barely an internet, but, Chad or Chris Aceto or Milos, people knew anything. If I saw anything written or said by them, so someone told me, he said, Chad Nichols is coming out with some website or something. And so I found it. I was one of the first members of that thing. That was an awesome resource.
Oh, dude, I was on that ththing for too much weight. I spent a lot of time on the muscle.
Same.
And I think your screen name was Troponin, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I need to tell the story actually because so when I was in college, which is kind of when all this started, in the 90s when I like alt misfit weights on AOL and then anabolics and then Triadia and some of those old ones. Well, I would go by troponin or tropomyosin. And the reason is when calcium goes into a muscle cell, it binds to troponin, which moves troponin off of tropomyosin and allows the myosin and actin crossbridge heads to interact. It causes a muscular contraction. So as a 19-year-old kid in college, I thought, those are cool words, troponin, tropomyosin, they cause a muscular contraction. Well, on Muscle Mayhem and Intense Muscle, I went by troponin. On other sites, I went by tropomyosin. I just kind of went, but the ones that ended up being the most popular, I went by troponin. Then I started helping people with nutrition. Then I started coaching. Then I built a website. And now, 25 years later, I'm stuck with Heart Attack Nutrition because once you get to a certain age, you learn that troponin is one of the markers they check to see if you've had a heart attack.
Correct.
But that is not the troponin. I mean, it is the same troponin. It's just an isolated case when that heart muscle dies, that, troponin levels spike. But I did it because I was 19. I barely knew about heart attacks at the time, but 19-year-olds don't worry about those things. I just thought they were cool words. So now I guess I try to say, Apple did okay in marketing as a fruit company. And so maybe I can get one trillionth of that.
Yeah. Giles Thomas from the UK?
Oh, yeah.
So Giles had a heart attack. I think it's been 4 years now. And that's what I remember is when they said his troponin levels were like sky high. I go, oh yeah, that's Justin Harris, Troponin Nutrition.
Yeah. What a great name choice. Yeah, if I could go back in time.
Yeah, it's catchy though. I got to say it's catchy. Speaking of going back in time, so this is how I originally knew about you, obviously from the Mayhem boards, but this Project Super Heavyweight video that you did with, what was Kuclo, like 18 or 19?
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is the kind of the time when I realized I should focus on coaching because, I mean, I was a good bodybuilder, and, flex and muscular development. They'd all done kind of articles on me. And I was kind of touted as one of the next people to turn pro. And then Steve Kuclo, he lived in the same town as me in Detroit. And so, someone mentioned me to him, and this 17-year-old kid comes to my apartment looking like he does in this video, and he's got a print off from bodybuilding.com with about a diet plan. And he walks in at 220, 10% body. He looks like a bodybuilder. I'm getting ready for like the Mr. Michigan. That's what he looks like. And he's got this print off and he's talking. He's like, yeah, I want to do bodybuilding. I'm reading some things. I guess it says you're supposed to eat chicken. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy doesn't know what protein is. And he's 220 with abs right now, just doing his workouts for hockey. And so, yeah, it wasn't very long till because I knew Steve didn't have Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath genetics, but watching Steve progress just so quickly, and I mean, I wasn't bad, but watching Steve progress so quickly made me realize like, wow, there's so many different levels. I'm at a level where I could get to the pro ranks, but it would take a lot of unhealthy things, and I couldn't relax. I'd have to be on my game 365. But I realized, I do feel like I have a genetic talent for coaching or retaining knowledge, and so that's the approach I went.
Yeah, so you were, you weren't a bodybuilder at all. You won the Junior USA Super Heavies, and
Yep.
those are back then. The junior shows were very, very competitive. Now people seem to skip them because there's
Yeah.
no pro card for bodybuilding.
Well, because it used to be the junior nationals winner, you know, Kevin, Paul DeMayo, like guys like that or Phil Heath, you'd do the junior nationals, and that's when you'd make your big splash, and you go on and win the USA 6 weeks later. That whole pathway, because you know, and it was the LA also. It was like you'd have the junior nationals, and then the LA was a week before the USA's, and so you knew who your new big pro was either 6 weeks before USA's or a week before, depending on junior. But those that whole feedway, that whole pathway is kind of dead, which we don't need it as much anymore because there's internet and social media. Back then you just had the magazines, so if you were going to get any hype, but even then 6 weeks wasn't enough time for magazine hype. I just missed that kind of. Summers were fun because you know, you'd get a guy who'd come burst on the scene at juniors, and then you had, you know, a month and almost 2 months before USA's where everyone's talking about, is he going to turn pro, is he going to do this, and we don't have that anymore.
Yeah, I remember very, very vividly the '91 Junior Nationals when a guy named Kevin Leveroni.
Oh man, yeah, and with Paul DeMayo was second, wasn't it? And then they reversed at USA's or Chris Cook. Chris Cook won the LA out of nowhere, came in, won supers at the USA's, but that was when they only gave 2 cards at the USA's, and they gave it to the heavy and the junior, and then did the same to him the next year.
Yeah. Oh, I'm old enough. I used to go to the USA when there was only 1 pro card.
Oh man, yeah. I was just getting into the sport, buying magazines at that time.
So what are we looking at here? What were you weighing on stage? Because this is good condition and look. So I'm going to try to guess. How tall are you, Justin?
5'11".
All right, I'm gonna say right here you were 258.
Yeah, that might be to the pound, isn't it? Are you looking at a stat sheet? That's remarkable.
I swear to God, I'm not.
Yeah, I want to say that because I was 266 a week out, and I would lose about 6, 8, 10 pounds. Yeah,
it's my useless talent in life. Get work at a carnival.
Yeah.
And so you were also a very, very strong guy as a power lifter. Can you give me like the top lifts? Because everybody can relate to squat, bench press.
Yeah, I hate it because I competed in triple ply era, and I only ever wore the gear I did 2 meets. I did 964 squat.
Jeez.
I think it was a Michigan State record, best triple ply. But I mean, I could do, because the plates we had would only hold 8 plates, 765. I could do 765 raw. I did 725 in a shirt. The most I ever did in a meet was 705. I did 495 for 4 off a 2-board raw. That was my best raw bench. Or I have videos on YouTube of me. I used to kind of troll myself. I would do half reps. So I have a video of me doing 60 reps with 225 and I think 30 reps with 315. But they're short reps. And then deadlift was 715 was my best deadlift. So I think 2,400 was I totaled elite both times. I honestly don't even know my totals because I never felt right about. I didn't train in the triple ply stuff. I never liked it. It was a weird era in that I didn't want to go to some raw powerlifting meet where a 405 squat won. There was, so if you wanted to compete in in the APF, if you wanted to compete against the best in the state of the world of the nation, you had to do triple ply meets. But I love what the sport has done now. I'm almost embarrassed to even give my numbers because raw guys are doing those triple ply numbers now. The strength game has what powerlifting has done over the last 20 years is not far from what bodybuilding did from 1950 to 1970. Where we went from Steve Reeves to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, but I don't think many guys. There are a few we can think. Like Johnny and Ben White. There's a few guys, but not many have been really good bodybuilders and really good powerlifters. It's a rarity. And
that's kind of the basis for a lot of my thoughts on training and hypertrophy, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, so back in the day, I believe you guys were following Dante Trudell's dog crap training. Am I right?
Correct. Yeah. So this video we were, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and actually this video, this follows us through 2 weeks of workouts that we did in 72 hours. Because I had no money. I couldn't pay a videographer. There was no cell phones, but you had to get a video. You had to get a guy, film studio, and they give me the numbers, and it was like 50 grand. I'm like, I got no money. some kid, So I worked out a deal, and he's like, look, I'm off Friday. He said, I'll come film you Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll do it. No charge. We'll split any profits for the first year. And so we filmed two leg workouts back to back. So if you saw me doing front squats in a black shirt, and I think I'm doing back squats in a gray shirt, same day after the leg workout, we went, changed clothes, and did a second leg workout. And in the follow-up, we did a follow-up nutrition videos, and my whole body cramped up during the middle of the segment because and then so in 72 hours I did 625 for 8, 535 for 12, 405 for 20 on squats, 495 for 10 on front squats, 675 for 4 or 5 on deadlifts, I think 495 on bent over rows, but all of those in a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I went to work on Friday. I trained before work on Friday. It was bro. I was peeing like chunks of black. It's the worst rhabdo. But I mean, it really created my career. I mean, I think we had almost 1,000 pre-sales.
Wow.
And so the videographer was like, he made his money before he produced the CDs, and we honored it. We sold a couple thousand the first year, and we split the profits with them. Maybe he didn't make his money because I think we sold it for like 29 or 39 bucks. And so, but yeah, we did a couple grand. I mean, it was great. And it really, I'm very grateful for Steve Kuclo. And I've heard other people talk about coaches, and they'll say, I hear like Mike Dolce in MMA or anyone, they'll say, well, he's just lucky that he knew so-and-so, which is true, but I'm really no different. I mean, I had the same knowledge as I do now. It was really, if I didn't live next to Steve Kuclo and we didn't film this video and then Steve like rapidly accelerated the ranks, I don't know what there's lots of intelligent people or lots of good coaches out there who don't get that opportunity. So this Steve Kuclo in this video, basically, I mean, my whole career was that was the launching point.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I couldn't think of Kuclo without you, or, you guys were tied in my mind together as like training partners. And were you coaching him at the time as well?
Yeah. I did all the way until he moved to Texas before he turned pro. And we still, I mean, what the sport's like, guys in prep, you're texting your buddies, hey, check these pics. Hey, I'm 6 weeks out. This is what I'm doing. What do you think? And so we kept in contact for a long time after that. But Steve's a smart guy, and he was. It was a good partnership. I was a few years older, so I had far enough into where I learned how the world worked, and that money matters. And then even though we love the sport, if you don't find a way to make money out of it, it's a tough road. And so he went in the fire academy, which was a great job for bodybuilding. Got his EMT certification, which really helped him with his knowledge. So he knew the training and nutrition stuff pretty good by then. So the last few shows that we even talked at all, he was really doing his own thing. And then I think he went to George Farah for a while, did really well with him. Gina Davis, a lot of people don't. Yeah, he went with her for a while. She's really good. Yeah.
I mean, there's so few women coaching male open bodybuilders.
Mm-hmm.
She did a fantastic job.
Especially because that's such a coaching, even female bodybuilders, they're bigger. But the difference between that and a Steve Kuclo who's 288 on stage, they're not even the same field. It's like an orthopedic surgeon versus like a cardiac doctor, cardiologist or something.
Yeah. Justin, did you have any coaches in that time, or is it all you?
All me, 100%. I don't know that was definitely not good for my bodybuilding career. And at one point, I actually emailed Tom Prince before my first contest about working with him. And then I just kind of decided, and I think it's what Sam Sulik's probably deciding a little bit right now, and you're seeing the results of it, because Sam could look twice as good. I mean, when you see Sam, what the body fat level Sam gets when you see the videos he posts a few weeks out is very low. He is more than ready, but he'll learn the peaking stuff. And I went through the same thing. I think, I had a degree in exercise science at the time, so I had a much better, background for it. But I just decided that I wanted to learn this coaching thing, and I knew I wasn't just guessing at ideas. I had an understanding, and so they were logical ideas, but people were paying me money, and I didn't want to try things on people that were giving me money. So I tried them on myself, more or less. And there's, when you have a baseline for how things work, when you understand human physiology, you're not just trying. There's not a billion different things to try. There's several ways to adjust. There's sodium and electrolyte manipulation. There's water manipulation. There's glycogen. there's some fatty acid infiltration acutely with high fat, but there's like 20 main kind of things that all kind of have to merge through, the body nutritionally and hormonally. And so you can kind of, you can get a sense of how all of them interact with just a few preps. And so I really didn't compete that long. I completed 2004, I won the Capital City and the Mr. Michigan back-to-back. 2005, I got my ass kicked at the Junior Nationals, when I learned what national level bodybuilding was. But in 2006, I came back, won the Junior USAs, and my last show was 2007, I did the USAs. And that was kind of, that was my last time where I tried a weird approach to peak that I shouldn't have. And I was just kind of, I was burned out. I think I knew I wasn't going to compete anymore. And I remember, I call them my back porch pics. I took a set of pictures at like a week out or 2 weeks out on my back porch of my house. And Dusty Henshaw still posts the rear lat from it. And I saw those pics and I was like, wow, I like those. I want to go back to off season and get even better. And I just lost all motivation the last 2 weeks to actually compete. I loved the progress. I loved the training. And as soon as I knew I was way better than I'd ever been, I didn't want to do the show. And so I did weird things to try. It burned me out in the sport, but that was the last show I did. But at that point, I felt very confident in my abilities as a coach. And I had a really good run after that, turning multiple people pro, picking up a bunch of big names. And then I just decided I have no idea why. One day I decided to go back and get a PhD in physics, despite not ever taking a physics or math class in my life in college. So I have a little bit of the tism, I think my kids say. I just get locked. I'd be a great hunting dog. I get locked. You're gonna have to put timestamps on this.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. Did you make a comeback in 2016, or was that a different Justin Harris?
I wish it was a different Justin Harris.
Oh, I mean, okay.
You're the first one who caught this. I was hoping I could sneak under the radar. Yeah, I did. No, I did. I wanted to. I learned, I think Ronnie Coleman kind of said the same. Jay Cutler a little bit when he, or Kevin Levrone, that was actually perfect. When you saw him in Instagram the weeks before a contest, you see, it's like, it's there. Yeah. When he's next to someone, there's that little three-dimensional thing. And that's what happened to me. I'm posting pics. I'm in the mirror. I'm big again. I'm 265, in pretty decent shape. I'm like, this is where I'm back. I'm doing masters now. I might sneak in. And if I don't next year, but when I got down and got in stage, it's like, wow, that's the little tiny tears and injuries and immobility. It was all there in bold relief. And I learned my lesson, and that was my last one. And I didn't have it in me anymore. Gotcha.
Well, we have something in common. That was a 2016 Masters Nationals, when you were 14th in the super heavyweights. After winning shows, I ended my career 3 years before at the same show, 14th place in the over 40 heavyweights.
Same. It's a bitter pill. It sucks. I mean, it sucks. Yeah, it sucks because you want to go out like die on my shield like a proper soldier, win in the field of battle. But I didn't even they barely get invited back to the night show. You're definitely not dying on the shield.
So coaching obviously has turned out to be, a great thing. You're very well respected. This is your most famous client right here, Brandon Curry. So how did that come about? How did you start working? Because he was off in Kuwait all those years.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, who's he going to work with in the U.S.? And then I heard Justin Harris, like, oh, wow. We'll see what these two can do together. And turns out you did very well together. So how did that come about?
He came up right after me. I think he won in 2008 or 2007 was my last show, USA's.
Yeah.
And I had repeatedly over the years, I just liked his physique. And I always felt like, man, this guy, I don't know. I know like roughly his genetics, but everything I know about him, like, why is this guy not nailing it every show? Something's not right. And so I think in several podcasts over the years, I kind of mentioned that. And like someone asked like a dream client, I think I said Brandon Curry, because that was after sometime after COVID where he kind of fell off and didn't do well in the show. And I was like, man, I know something's not right. Well, he almost did work with me then, but I don't, he doesn't know about Troponin nutrition, or he doesn't follow me, or, so he didn't know how to get a hold of me. And then finally last year, 2024, he did get a hold of me. And that's all it was he had just kind of been thinking about it for years. And for something finally, he didn't want to go overseas anymore. He wanted to stay home. His son is, his son's going to be like a 4 or 5 star football player. I think he already is a 4-star for underclassmen. Just a phenomenal athlete, fast. He'll play on Sundays if he stays healthy. And he's got his wife's awesome. His family's really close knit. His family's awesome. I've only met him a couple of times, but they're great. They're awesome because his wife's like really outgoing, energetic, and her father is the same way. And then Brandon's kind of reserved and stoic. Because what you're looking at, this is so at the UK, he didn't have his luggage didn't arrive. So we peaked for that with no food, no clothing. He had to borrow posing. So that's him peaking on whatever we could scrummage, basically. And then even better, the Arnold US, he got sick the night before. He got sick that night. The show's Friday. I'm waiting for pics. You see, he's a little flat. He lost 14 pounds the day of that show, the morning of.
Jeez.
And so we didn't even know if he's going to be on stage. And he comes out, and now everyone's talking about how he got screwed. And the reason I was frustrated with Brandon when I'd see him be off is because guys with genetics like that, everything works the way it's supposed to. And so you doesn't mean you can't make mistakes, but it means if you understand how the human body works, it's going to work for him. And so what you're looking at right now, we were loading sodium and water that day. Wow. Which you'll never see, see someone like purposely. I mean, you'll see backstage sodium, but we were doing it to purposely dry out because he was so sick, throwing up, so dehydrated, low on sodium. So I knew he was hyponatremic. I knew he was very dehydrated. So there's no way to store glycogen then. There's not enough sodium and excess water in the blood to combine with glucose to store glycogen. So if we carved up, it's called redistributive hyponatremia. He would fall apart if we tried to fill him back out on the day after losing 14 pounds. So we added carbs, but to add carbs, we knew we'd have to load. We needed a lot of extra sodium and water. So we was chugging water that day and drying out the skin, because what that water and sodium was doing was it was then creating the situation where in the bloodstream it could combine with glucose to form glycogen, and it would tighten the skin up. And so, I mean, he was pretty close. So you can see how dry his hamstring were. But man, going into that week, I was like, we knew he's not going to win. The judges aren't going to give him the nod. And then it's tough to beat guys like Andrew or Nick. They're just the younger guys. And Andrew's just, his frame's enormous. But he was looking incredible and like 12 pounds heavier than he'd ever been. But this is what we pulled off doing. If I showed you what we were doing the day of, people would be like, what the hell are you doing? He's got a show in 8 hours?
So you were saying, so what shows have you done with him? Did you work with him for the Olympia? And
the first one we did was 2024. 25 Arnold. We've done Arnold, Olympia, Arnold.
Okay.
And then we filmed some of it. We filmed quite a bit. I'm in film with Generation Iron. So we filmed a lot of the Olympia with Generation Iron. I got a pretty cool video on my YouTube, I think, I think that was actually my video guy, but he works with Generation Iron a lot. And man, their guys are so good. I can't do any video content now after working with them because I'll get my little cell phone out and it's like, it looks so shitty. And then they'll send me something that's like, immersive depth of field and lighting. I'm like, wow, that's different. That's better than what I'm doing.
That's all they do, though. That's all
they
do. They're very good at. So you're saying you've never really we haven't really seen Brandon as good as we could see him, which is mind-boggling because I thought he looked damn good at these last two Arnolds.
He did. I mean, he looked as good as he could have, and that's why I was so happy working with him, because that's the thing. When you have guys, what genetics really do is they make everything work the way it's supposed to. And now I've followed you your whole career. I think roughly where your genetics are. You don't have any room for error. And things don't always work. Sometimes you might add carbs and you don't get fuller. You just get watery. With genetic elites, the things that you do to fill out always fill you out. The things you do to dry out always dry. Yeah. So it's like, all you got to know is how the human body works. And then when you get in a shitty situation, like, it was like 10 a.m. and of the show day. They're supposed to be on at 7. They don't get on until later. But it's 10 a.m. He texts me and I'm like, hey, dude, where's your morning check-in? How's it going? He said, not good. And he sent his weight, and he was like 256 or 258 the night before. And he sent it and it was like 243. And so I said, but the pictures didn't come through, and we're at the Arnold, so reception's terrible. So just that wait, and I'm waiting and waiting. And I was like, hey man, pictures aren't coming through. I'm at the expo. I'm assuming 253, and so I start writing out, and as I'm typing what to eat, the pics come through, and his second response, no, 243.
Oof.
Rough night. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck. Yeah. So, but we pulled it off. But that's the thing. When you know, like, we knew what's going on. He's dehydrated. His blood sodium's low. We know his glucose in his blood is high. I bet you we took his blood sugar, it'd be like 140. So we don't need, there's already enough carbs there. We just gave it the water and sodium it needed. And then the tricky part is if you give too much water and sodium, you're back to Shitsville. But when you time it correctly, it works out.
Yeah, he's had some rough luck. I haven't been to an Olympia in person since 2023. And I remember he was at the press conference, everyone was saying he's out of the show. He went to the hospital, and he was at the hospital the night before. He comes in, he still ended up getting 4th place in the Olympia that year.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm saying all these things, because he would never tell anyone. That dude is the most. I think I got it around here. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius on Stoicism. I look that up every once in a while. But that could be written by Brandon. Like it was like pulling teeth. Like, Brandon, are you alive? Yes. Okay, that can mean I know you're. So you are breathing. You know, it's like the guy's like on death's door, throwing up, and it like won't. You know, which is what you need in the sport. You need. If you're a stressful person or an on edge person or a high energy person, good luck, because if you look every top guy, you know, like was Kevin Maroney or Paul Dillard or Chris Cormier, you know, like, or Jay Cutler, you know, like, even they're not all the same kind of just chill. I always joke that, like, if you're going to be a best bodybuilder, you need to be like just some pothead who doesn't give a shit about anything, because that's what works. Or you got to be really stoic. If you're a stressful, high anxiety person, peak weeks are going to be rough for you. You're going to be your own worst enemy.
Yeah. So I'm also curious, if, you know, as a coach, sometimes it's really hard to see your client not get the call outs you think they should, the placings you think they should. We saw it at the Olympia where I soundly had him beating Nick Walker. Nick, when he's 100%, Brandon doesn't beat him.
Exactly. Yeah.
But Nick was not 100%. And then Arnold USA this year, Martin beats him. And I was like, I don't know about that. I had him beating Martin.
Yeah, I had that one too.
But we did finally get the call outs we wanted at the UK. Oh, it's the wrong one. I don't have the one with Brandon in it. But he ended up beating Martin at the Arnold UK, and
I got second. Yeah, and it was really good because he got an individual call out with just him and Andrew, which was nice because he got left out of that final call out 3 shows in a row. You know, it's weird. I don't know. I think I would imagine at his age, and we just talk bodybuilding. I mean, we talk like friend things, but I don't like. I want to talk about things we can control. And I think once you get to a certain age, I understand from owning business. I understand the business aspect. The IFBB is a business. You know. It is what it is. Andrew Jack's not young, but he's an upcomer. That's a big story. Brandon, like, winning can be a big story, but it's not really a good ongoing story with his age. You know, it's a, you know, die on your shield kind of story. And so I understand a little bit about that from the financial aspect. And then also from mine and Brandon's financial aspect, the guy's honest truth is, well, I don't promote my coaching. I never have. It's been word of mouth, which has worked, and then which works better because the only people who work with you are people who went out and found you, you know. But like, I get 10 times if Brandon would have beat Martin, you know, when everyone, yeah, that's what it should have been, and no one would talk about it. We're now like, guys are still posting videos I see on Instagram, still, you know, bitching about the Arnold US and Brandon's placing, and so the carry you get from that, and I guarantee Brandon's probably. You know, SciTech's probably going to re-up him. He's got any sponsorship contracts that are coming up. He's in a better position. He's in a better position because of the hype than he would have been if he had placed where he should have, honestly. So the world's weird. You know, you got to look. If you look at things from all angles, there's usually a way to pull, you know, to benefit yourself. And he's smart that way. I think from looking at things from a financial perspective, I think he's benefiting really well right now. We're actually. Although we're never going to get that nice smooth peak though, because he's been on vacation in Mexico and he just texted me yesterday while I was doing a podcast, actually 2 days ago, right in the middle of the podcast, a text pop up from him. He said, "Hey, they want me to do a Pittsburgh in like 3 weeks." I'm like, "You're in Mexico?" He's like, "I know." I was like, "All right, what do you weigh?" I'm not going to say, but I was like, "Well, I'm not going to say it's possible because it's not." No, but so we're going to do Pittsburgh, and I have a feeling that that's kind of a, hey, we've realized, you know, we want to get another look at you. So it sucks because, you know, like that's we got to pull it together again in 3 weeks. But if we can, I think he's going to get a proper look, you know, and so maybe pull out a win at Pittsburgh. I hope.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
So he was not planning on doing anything else this year until the Olympia, I'm guessing.
No, he was probably drinking them. He was literally in Mexico like 2 days ago. So,
Wow.
but we'll see. That's genetics for you. I mean, that's why, genetics are wild, because most people who have them don't ever succeed in the sport. They're genetically gifted because it comes too easy for them. So, you need to find it's the best people in any sport are like they always have stories like Michael Jordan didn't make the basketball team as a sophomore. Well, most people don't make varsity as a sophomore, especially at a big school. But if he would have made varsity as a sophomore and been All-American, who knows what would happen, because everything would have came so easy for him. You need a little chip on your shoulder, almost Ronnie Coleman's are very rare where you get the best genetics and the best work ethic. Much more, and I don't want to disparage anyone. I've never met Michael Lockett. He might have an incredible work ethic. I don't know, but Michael Lockett's are what you usually get, a genetic anomaly who it came so easy for them they didn't have to learn the work ethic.
Oh, I've known so many guys like that, so many, and everyone was like, "You got to do a show, you got to do a show," and they would do one show, prep half-ass,
Yep,
and that was it. They were done. They're like, "Ah, that was interesting.
That was easy." Yeah, I'd eat chicken for 2 weeks. I don't want to do that anymore.
Exactly, man. Good times. So you told me before we started recording about another guy you started working with recently, or you're going to start working with. Very excited to hear this. We're talking about Carlos Thomas Jr. So, man, I thought he had retired. I thought he said he was retired. So how did that come about? Because he's I've known him for a while. Him and his dad. I love them both.
Yeah, I don't know him very well, but I think partly through Brandon, but I met his dad at the Arnold last year, and we talked for a while. I mean, everyone talks to his dad for a while. And it worked great because Carlos and I have the same father. I mean, we're different melanin levels, but his dad is exactly like my dad. My dad was a salesman, loves it. My dad's idea of his dream Saturday would be accidentally going to the wrong wedding where there's 1,000 people he doesn't know. He gets to meet 1,000 new friends. Like that's my nightmare, like having to go somewhere alone where I don't know anybody. And so I just talked to his dad, and he said didn't want to be done, but they're having a hard time finding someone to fit. And I said, I don't know I've never worked with a coach. So I honestly don't know how other coaches do things, but I'm not a my way or the highway. I will never say trust the process. If there is a process, I'll explain it so you can understand it. You don't have to trust it. And that's what's been nice with Brandon, because he's got a degree in exercise physiology. So like when I'm telling him the weird shit we're going to do the day of a show, and I explain the physiology, he understands it, so he's not trusting a process. And I think Carlos had been getting that where, people, because you get a guy like that with that kind of genetics, everyone's trying to do some weird, extreme, crazy, I know the thing. I know look at his genetics, let those do the thing, And so I like the carb cycle, but there's a million different ways to diet. The only way that doesn't work is trying all million at once. So if someone has an approach that they honestly believe works better for them, I'll know it doesn't. I'll know that the only reason it works better for them is because they believe it does, and we'll go with it. And so I think that's with Carlos. I think he didn't want to be like bossed around or, why aren't you doing this or this, or you need to do this better, where I'm not that way. Like you do your check-in and I say, well, here's what needs to change. Here's the diet, supplements, everything. Here's the things that's going to create that change. Here's the physiological mechanisms that it's going to work through. And then, from my point of view, I was a competitor. If you don't have it in you, I'm not going to put it in you, especially a male bodybuilder. But like you either have that where you're the one on stage, either you're going to get yourself, I guess a better way to put it is, I don't get people in shape. I get them in shape more optimally. You're either going to grind and do what it takes to get there, or you're not. I can't change that. I'm going to give you the most efficient way so it's easier, faster, more effective, less stressful, less draining. And I think so far it's worked really well with him. He's been great. He's like super nice guy. Like, anyone who is a coach knows that people they always got late with their check-ins, or, I know I'm supposed to check in on Tuesday. He did that one time, and he sent like a whole paragraph apologizing. I'm like, dude, you see what you look like on stage? I'm not, you can be a day late with a check-in. I'll tolerate it.
Yeah. And the big challenge with him, because My son looks up to. My son's diagnosed a few years ago with ulcerative colitis.
Okay, yeah.
It's a huge challenge for bodybuilding, I'm
So
sure.
hard, yeah. Yeah, well, that's tough. I mean, really tough because I I haven't even mentioned it much with him. We designed the diet to try to, but that's another tough one because when you anytime you because I've celiac and I found that if you have an issue and everything you do you look at through the lens of, well, how is my issue affecting this? You just start focusing on the issue, you know. So we really haven't talked about it much. He's had a couple of stuff, but yeah, that sucks because it's the foods we eat are so hard on the digestive system. We eat so much of it. And I think I don't have any real data other than it sure seems like, but man, the number of bodybuilders I know with UC or Crohn's or IBS or celiac or SIBO or Candida,
Yeah.
I don't know any. I mean, obviously, I know a lot more bodybuilders' nutritional habits because I work with them, but I know very few people with any of those. I know a couple like regular people with maybe Crohn's, but I don't know that how many people friends of mine or close acquaintances where I know quite a bit of bodybuilders with also colitis. That's a rough one.
I mean, yeah, my son, it took a long time with medications and diet changes to finally get it managed. Because if you know what a flare up is, well,
Oh yeah.
the flare up is basically diarrhea that's goes on for days and days. And yeah, it's miserable. It's a miserable way to live until you get it figured out.
Yeah, so my diets are kind of like IBS friendly in general. My food list is essentially low FODMAP. I don't, I'm not a lot of seed type foods, and luckily because those things fit a bodybuilding diet well. And then you just have to pluck off a few edge cases really. But we tend to kind of, and I like to do generally hypoallergenic foods. I don't do a lot of wheat based stuff in general. Most of my foods are rice. Rice is low allergy. I think there is a risk also of when you don't. I partly wonder how much my celiac was the fact that I didn't eat gluten for 10 years. And
Hmm.
then I left bodybuilding and ate like a normal human, and was sick for 2 years, when I finally got diagnosed celiac. And so I wonder, like, because for a decade, I'm not a bread fan, period. I'm not a big drinker. So beer, bread, the only time those would ever even come in the equation would be a cheat meal. And even a lot of times my cheat meal would be sushi or Thai food or, it was never bread. It would be maybe burger, or pizza. And I would get violently sick, but I'd be like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm in prep and I just ate a whole large pizza. Of course I'm ill, but
Yeah.
I wonder how much our pretty, like so many people you hear like the three foods, 3 food diet or the 6 foods that work. And I don't want to like single anyone out because that does work because there are, and I do the same thing with pick it, kill it, grow it, or meat, rice, repeat. You do kind of, but you do want some variety, I think. And I think we just eat so much food and get so restrictive with it. I wonder how much that, if my body didn't see gluten for a decade and then I flood it with gluten,
Mhm.
the likelihood that some autoimmune response is going to be triggered is higher probably than if I ate gluten every day my whole life.
So you bring up another interesting point is, there's this generation of competitors. I hate being that old cranky guy who says,
I know, I know.
but sometimes I just have to.
It's
They,
impossible not to.
they, how do I say it without offending them? They don't really want to ever feel any hunger or discomfort. They don't want to eat bland foods. This must be a challenge because I'm sure you don't work with just people in our age range. You must work with a lot of younger people too, and
Yeah.
they want
And
to
I
have.
work with anyone. And so I'm one of the few guys, I don't have any requirements. Over the years, I just decided all this new stuff is interesting to me. So a lot of my guys don't have any plan. A lot of people, I still have a lot of like cardiology type because I was a nutritionist for a cardiology group out of college. And that's kind of like word of mouth. I still have a few like congestive heart failure, cardiomyopathy type people who are post cardiac rehab. They're in deep phase 3 cardiac rehab and they're looking for, and so I see a lot of different things, but yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there is a enormous difference where I remember I worked at Rite Aid when Lou Ferrigno came back,
Oh,
or right after he came back, and you could look up. This is the computers were connected to an internet. It was like what 95, 6, I don't remember. There was internet, but it wasn't like a thing, and so there was no. You could get into anything if you looked hard enough. So I would look up. It must have been 97 because Britney Spears had just come out. Because I looked up what her medications were, and they were like, it was interesting medication. But then I was like, Lou Ferrigno. I tried to find every bodybuilder. The only one I could find was Lou Ferrigno, but it just made me think because I remember his diet was like literally tuna and rice, and and that's what it was. Like we didn't even have Splenda. We had Equal, like it was like, we didn't have any of these, like certainly no GLP stuff. We didn't have any 0-calorie seasonings so you just learn, like, I just learned chicken and rice. That's what and wasn't even debated. I'm from the days of guys didn't know anything. There was no internet to get experts. And so your local gym expert would be like, yeah, well, you just eat no carbs, eat fish and broccoli, for 6 weeks. And you're like, all right, game on, 2 hours of cardio a day. I'm on it,
That was Leveroni. That's exactly what he did, was fish and broccoli for 6 weeks and 2 hours of cardio a day.
Yeah.
He used to get shredded. But you mentioned the GLPs, the peptides. I mean, it seems like this generation, again, I'm sorry, guys, I'm not shitting on you, but it seems like they want to use as many different drugs as possible to avoid working harder or suffering like this. What's your opinion on Reta? Because Retatrutide seems like everyone is on Retatrutide now.
I want to be careful with it because, like you do a little blurb on a podcast and people think that's like your hardline overall stance on life,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's still so new. Yes, as far as appetite suppression, it's a miracle worker. There's nothing. We used to love ephedra. Ephedrine was our or nicotine. Like nicotine gum. That's not even a drop. That's like adding another soldier on an aircraft carrier. It's like, yeah, it is a little. But the aircraft carrier GLP-1. I mean, you can just not eat ever. You could kill yourself. I mean, it's insane. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, great technology is great. We take everything else that helps us. And I think some of the risks are that this sport in general, because we get in a weird loop where we like to ignore genetics. No one goes to baseball and thinks, you know what, I want to be a pitcher in the major leagues. I'm going to take steroids.
Right.
We know, yeah, you'll throw faster, but you're still not throwing 100 miles an hour. Or I'm not going to beat Usain Bolt. I'll get faster if I train sprinting and I take steroids and train it to be faster. But the fastest natural guys, you know what I mean? Or no one thinks I'm going to play off left tackle for the Giants. I'm not 6'8", Yeah. But bodybuilding, because of steroids, we think but the truth is the genetic guys are doing the same things, so that good luck. And then the genetic response to gear is one of the biggest genetic things. And I think that, and no one will believe us, but you've seen what the top guys take, and it's a wide range, but it's not the biggest cycles are always from the middle of the road guys on the internet that you don't know. It's like genetics just rule everything. But so I hate that just our natural thought in the sport is, ooh, a new drug, let's take it, like that drug addict you. So, yeah. And so I really dislike the push everyone's using in the off season. I hate that. I'm not against it. If I had a massive appetite and could get too fat even on chicken and rice in the off season, if someone's like that and they can take the edge off, sure. But I have so many guys who their biggest problem is we can't get enough food in them. And they want to try Reta in the offseason just because it's a new drug. It's like, can't you try heroin or some other, try any, and so they'll do the thing where they convince themselves, they don't really believe it, but they'll say whatever they think will make sense. Because the end result is they're going to try Reta, and they're just, and what happens is they do lose their appetite and it builds up. And by the time you can't eat your off-season diet, and you stop the Reta, it's another week before you're even it's getting out of your system. And you lose a month of progress for no reason, just because, it's like, and because the logic is always like, well, I figure if I don't have an appetite, I won't care that I'm eating chicken and rice because I won't want to eat anything. It's like, no, dude, if you think it's hard to eat chicken and rice when you're starving, try eating dry ass chicken and rice when you don't want to eat pizza. It's not working. And so I've seen that too much, but in prep, I mean, it's a miracle component for appetite. It just is. I'm not going to lie about that. My concern is that, how am I going to word this without getting into a whole rant? It seems to be really good for getting people off drugs and alcohol, addiction. Okay, well, so addiction works at a dopamine pathway. Anti-dopamine is prolactin. Men produce prolactin in a huge quantity after we ejaculate. And that's what causes the refractory period. That post-nut clarity where you don't even think about sex is because of anti-dopamine. Well, clearly this GLP is working somewhere, and these are complex neurotransmitters. Clearly this GLP is affecting something in that dopamine pathway that for alcoholics who get that dopamine rush from alcohol, it's blending that and allowing them to get off alcohol. Well, another dopamine thing that's the only reason you and I are both here and every human is here is because of that dopaminergic drive to put our penis in things. And that goes away when dopamine is suppressed or when prolactin is increased. And you see that that's one of the common side effects is kind of a loss of sexual urge. And I think that extends even further because that urge is basically the reason I have this microphone right here, this really nice camera, these computers. Without those urges, no, people don't do anything.
Right.
And so I just think like everything that drives society, and not that society's perfect or that technology is always great. And maybe we would, I'm sure we probably would all be happy if we just hung out with our wives and kids and looked for food and had a nice, simple life. I think, we can appreciate that, but we're not in that world and AI is taking over. And so that world's never coming back. And if we have a whole slew of people who have no interest in sex, no drive to succeed, no motivation to create and invent things, and not that it's going to go down that path automatically, but it certainly touches on the first steps of that pathway with, in good ways with the, like potential against drug addiction. But I just envision a bunch of bodybuilders in 10 years with no motivation, no drive, no sexual urge. Wow. And now you're out of the sport. And you're also, whether it's true or not, in your mind, you're thinking, if I ever stop taking this GLP, I'm going to get so fat. Because by now I'm taking 10 milligrams a day and I'm hungry again. I've been taking this for, things like that are going to happen. So that's not my job as a coach. My job is to get you in shape. If you're in prep and you're having trouble sticking to a diet, GLPs work. Red is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it came on the scene so fast. It came to market so fast. So many millions and millions of people on it all around the world, especially in the USA. It just seems too good to be true. Ozempic, you're already hearing things in the news about what's happening to people. And I think Retta, as good as it is, every drug has a side effect and every drug has long-term effects that aren't, you're not going to know about this for years. Mm-hmm. So,
I'll tell you right now, if I'm and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but if I'm of the ilk of wanting to produce another pandemic that could, release a vaccine, I have a very clear evidence that I don't got to go down the vaccine and forced route. Let me invent something that'll make people skinny if they take it, and then I can add anything else to that molecule I want, and everyone's going to eat it up. And even when the experts are saying, "Well, hold back, we don't know the side effects yet," I'm like, "Screw that! I can see, I can get in shape." It's like that, it's hilarious because the body positivity movement just vanished.
Correct.
Overnight. It went from I don't even know if you might be jailed if you said the word fat. You couldn't, we're older. I was a dumb Polak as a kid. I walked, I got to hear jokes like, "How do you sink a Polish battleship? Put it in water." Yeah, but that's how everyone talks. So if you had a fat buddy, he had a nickname that has something to do with his obese, and the body positive thing was great. And it isn't cool to make fun of people, but it took a little bit of like the way guys kind of josh around and goof with each other, kind of remove some of that. I think there's some camaraderie involved, but that's good. But it's hilarious because this drug came out and now body positivity is gone because we don't have to be fat if we don't want to. We can take this drug that kills our sexual drive and makes us not pursue joy in life, but at least we're not fat.
No, you make another good point. I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, but if you put in a comment on anyone's post on Facebook or Instagram, the word fat, immediately a warning is going to come up saying, "You sure you want to post this? This looks like other comments that have been reported." Yeah, you can't say fat. So it's
what's funny is I come from a fairly overweight family. And so that was a bad word. And so when I was a kid, I learned 1, 2, one, two, buckle my shoe. It was 9, 10, a great big hen. And then Queen sang "Flat Bottom Girls." I remember, because if you listen to the song, you could pull it up. But I remember even being like 8 years old and like my mom telling me that. I was like, "Flat butts? I don't think that's right." I don't know much about this, but I don't think flat butts are what makes the world go round, Mom. I've seen some big ones, and those are better looking.
It's fat bottom girls.
Yeah. But when my parents told me it was flat bottom because fat was yeah. So
hilarious. So again, getting back to the current generation, because I love to piss them off. Now, I love you guys. Please watch my video. But I wonder if you have to do a lot of deprogramming when you work with younger athletes, because they grew up on this social media, and especially the past few years, all you see is, I call it gear porn, where they're posts talking about, here's my cycle, it's 2 grams of test, a gram of tren, a gram of Masteron, 20 hours. So they're already programmed to think that's what everyone needs to do, whether you're doing a local show or the Mr. Olympia. So when you start working with clients and the PEDs and the protocols, that subject comes up, do some of them sort of scoff at you and think, that's not enough? What are you doing?
I'm sure. I don't. My thought is, I'm not your parent or your doctor. Do whatever the fuck you want. Take 100 grams of test if you think it's going to work. Because if it did, that's what we would all be doing. If you would have asked me in any of those videos or pictures you showed, if you would have told that guy, hey, here's this drug, it's dangerous, it's guaranteed going to take at least 10, maybe 20 years off your life, but you'll win Mr. Olympia. I'll be like, yeah, I'll take 2. Where the fuck, because that's the beauty of youth. Old age is something that doesn't exist yet. So, I would, but the thing is, here's how I look at it. Here's what I basically tell guys. There is a range of doses, and it's fairly high, but it's not the numbers you see. And what happens is, you do your first cycle and it's low dose, and you do another cycle more dose, and you keep getting better progress. And that works, but it's not a linear graph. It's a logarithmic graph. And it's somewhere, and I've said the number, I've tracked thousands of cycles since the 90s. I've been working with people, and you have to trust what they say, but like, it's within some error bar of what, but and time and time again, I find that you get to somewhere where your total milligrams, and this is a big ass cycle. This isn't a baby cycle, obviously, but these are the upper limits. You get to somewhere in like the 2 to 3 gram range, where like you're over a gram of test per week plus your other stuff. Once you get to that range, if you go higher dose, you're not guaranteed to get faster progress. Right. Why? Because the side effects start building up. You could take 1,000 milligrams of Anadrol a day. Yeah, that's a shit ton of antibiotics. Great, but you're not going to be able to eat. You're going to be so lethargic you can't move. Your blood pressure is going to be so high. And so it's not just that you're not just creating the environment for growth. You have to supply the other ingredients, a training stimulus, and food. If you're so lethargic, you can't work out for shit, and you have no appetite, and you're not eating, well, what's building the muscle? Because muscle's made out of protein. Muscle is food. If you're not eating the food, you're not building the muscle. You can synthesize, you can build muscle even in a deficit, but you're still bound by conservation of energy. Meaning, if you gain 2 pounds of muscle at not in a calorie surplus, those 2 pounds have to come calorically from other parts of the body. Probably not going to come from glycogen, because that's what's fueling everything. So yeah, it'll come from fat. Perfect. That's 2 pounds. How far is it going to go? You're not going to add 100 pounds of muscular body weight that way, because you don't have 100 excess pounds of fat to convert it into it. And if you did, you wouldn't. And if you did have 100 pounds of excess fat, you wouldn't be able to do that, because high body fat creates a hormonal case where aromatization of estrogen's higher, insulin sensitivity is lower, that you can't even do that anyways. So you're only even able to do that when you're already lean. So like, the long story short is, I always say, go ahead, try every fucking cycle you want. Take the stupidest, craziest cycle, and that's great. If it works, great, but it's not going to, because you're going to find the same as every single other one of us has found, that we tried crazy stuff. We've all tried crazy cycles. Nothing different happened. And everyone eventually falls into somewhere in this range, and you get, say 1.2 grams of test, 1,000 milligrams of primobolan, that's your off-season cycle, add GH and insulin. You're about as good as it gets. You can go to 2 grams test, and you have more antibiotics flow in your bloodstream, more your androgenic profile, your blood's higher. You are on paper hormonally more optimized for growing. But if that 2 grams of test causes test flu and you have a fever, you're not building muscle, and you're not training well either. And if that test flu makes you not be able to eat, if you eat 500 calories less a day, it doesn't matter how much test you get, you're going to grow 500 calories less a day. And so that's what I say. Basically, what I say is, if you don't believe me, and I know you don't, at the very least, get all that shit out of your system quickly. Because what happens is, a guy takes the test cycle and he grows a little bit. So then he takes test and DECA and grows even better. But he still doesn't look like Mr. Olympia. He doesn't look like Andrew Jack yet. So then he thinks, well, it's Tren. That's why I don't look like Andrew Jack. Those guys are using Tren. So the next cycle comes around, you try Tren. Still didn't work. Okay, well, it's Androl. They're taking the credit. They're loading up on Adderall. I know it. So then
Yeah.
the next cycle comes around and you're loading up on Adderall. Then it's GH. Then it's insulin. Well, now it's 10 years later, and what are you looking for? IGF-1 is the secret drug. You still don't look like Andrew Jack, and you've wasted a decade trying all these cycles, thinking each one's going to be the magic potion. And now maybe you realize there is no magic potion, and you look elsewhere. Oh shit, none of these work. Okay, let me find a good, competent cycle that's pretty high dose, but obviously this isn't the secret magic potion. Let me get a good cycle. Now let me dial in my diet and training. Boom, now I'm growing. But you wasted a decade. I just want young guys not to waste that decade.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it before. It's this delusion that's unique to bodybuilding you don't see in other sports. Because there are drugs used openly and people talk about it, so many guys are under the impression that I can make up for any supposed genetic shortcomings because they don't want to even believe that there are such things as elite genetics and average genetics. They think they can compensate for that with more and more drugs. And they'll say, well, look, this pro, he's in an interview and he said he uses 5 grams of gear a week and 20 IUs of GH a day. And that's why he looks like that. I said, well, go ahead and try that. I'm not encouraging you because it's not safe. But if you honestly believe that, go ahead and do it. Come back to me in a year and let's see if you look like Andrew Jack or whoever it was.
That's the part I hate. It's like these kids grew up in a sensationalized media environment. They know that's how most of them are trying to be influencers where they purposely do videos that mislead people into, yes, I know when you see a guy hooked up to an oxygen mask at the gym working out, he doesn't wear an oxygen mask when he works out. He knew that would get views. When that same guy tells you he tried 100 IUs of GH a day, he's not taking 100 IUs of GH every day. He maybe did try that, but he knows in saying that he's getting 10,000 new followers. And that's what drives me crazy. It's like these goddamn kids are the first generation who grew up with it boldly shown in their face, thinks that the whole fucking world is a mirage and a lie. Everything the media tells you is a slant on the truth. Everything you tell everyone else is a slant on the truth. When you go out with your buddies and get shit-faced drunk playing golf and, and crash the golf cart and rack up 2,000, you don't go home and tell your wife, I got shit-faced drunk, passed out, drove into a yeah, it was a good night. We I spent a little too much. Yeah, Bob drank too much. We drove him home, whatever. Because that's. And so that's what I don't get. And I understand a little bit is that everyone knows beginner cycles because they're the lowest amounts, has to be, right? And then they go on the internet and they see these guys who are not pros, who are good bodybuilders. They look better than they do, but they're not pros. And these are the guys posting about these crazy cycles. Why? Because they're building up their follower count, and they do it until they get to the follower count that then allows them to generate revenue through whatever else they're doing. But then you think, okay, here's the beginning cycles. These middle of the road guys are doing these crazy doses. The pros must be up here. And so you can understand that a little bit, but it just drives me crazy. It's like, God damn it, because aren't you guys are the first generation who's smart enough to not fall for everyone's BS, and you're falling for everyone's BS.
You mentioned that I actually interviewed that kid from the UK, Maximus Wadsworth.
Yeah.
He had the CPAP mask on in the gym.
Yeah.
He did it. He intentionally said in the interview that was rage bait.
Oh, for sure. I used to do that. Yeah. I remember I did one video, 50 rep pull-ups, where I did like 8 reps and then I started jumping up. And then at the end, I'm just kind of like wiggling my arms, and because I knew, and sure enough, this is YouTube. This is before social media, but every comment, it's like, oh, sweet, I got 1 million views, It works because it works and we all fall for it. But I just thought like these kids are the one, they don't buy any of the CNN narrative or the Fox News narrative. They caught on that people who are trying to benefit from you, who benefit when more people see what you've said, will lie to you to get more people to see what you've said. They buy it everywhere else. And then they're like, oh, I like the sport bodybuilding. Let me buy into every rage bait narrative.
Yeah. Last thing I want to show you, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but you tell me if this looks familiar. All right. Do you see it there?
No, yeah.
You know what that is?
Family crest. I made a new one. The new Harris family crest. Actually, it's a shorn lamb wearing a pirate hat eating asbestos in front of a Camaro. And so we're working on it. It's a whole process to get those things updated because that's from like the 1600s or something. Yeah. But hopefully next time you log on, you'll see the lamb in the pirate hat in front of the Camaro eating asbestos.
That sounds better than this. This is freaking hedgehogs.
That's hilarious though, because I went through I learned about family crests sometime when I was like 12 or something, and I went through, and that was pre-internet, and found the Harris family crest. That's hilarious though. You and I might be the only Harrisons who actually know that.
Yeah, I want to see. I want to see. It was so it comes from Harrisons were hedgehogs in France, and I guess the name sort of like I didn't know that our name came from hedgehogs, but apparently
Yeah, well, that was my nickname in high school.
Wow. Okay, so you knew that. Okay, I didn't. I thought I would stump you on that one. Good. I'm glad to know I didn't.
So I was, you're dealing with a guy who's got, like I told you, I got a little bit of autism. If it's some weird thing that no one's supposed to know about, there's a good likelihood that me at some point at like age 12 or 14 was obsessed with it for a week.
Wow, cool. Well, Justin, man, interview has been so overdue, but I'm glad we connected. So happy to see you're coaching at the level it's at, and you're working with guys like Brandon Curry, who I've known for a long time, and
He's a good dude. I like him.
and like him a lot. So, and Carlos Thomas Jr. My goodness, another one.
Yeah, I don't know him yet, but he seems like a really good guy. I didn't know what to expect about him, but he seems like a guy I'd like to hang out with. Just cool, laid back dude. Just, I don't know. I guess I am a spaz when I start talking, but when I'm hanging out with people, I'm more like I like chill kind of guys. And Carlos seems that way, and Brandon definitely is.
Oh, they're both. Carlos is about the most mellow guy. You'll never.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine him like freaking out. Like,
Yeah.
I can't, just
That's why then, yeah, we're gonna nail it with him then, because that's all I need to hear. You have decent genetics, and you're a guy that doesn't freak out. If your mom describes you as what's your son like? Well, best way I can describe him is if you told him his house burned down, he'd go, "Oh, that sucks." Or if you told him he won the lotto, he'd go, "Oh, that's great." Because when I hear that, I'm like, that's a bodybuilder. Because the only thing that fucks up bodybuilding beyond, other than if you have the genetics for it, is your own mind in the peak week by stressing and ruining everything. And so that's when I see a guy that's laid back. When I see like Ruly Winkler having to be reminded to eat by Oma, I'm like, that's why he's good. Those are the guys. Or when Ronnie Coleman's like, oh yeah, I got a show tomorrow, I'm gonna compete. You know, like,
wow.
Because you see, like, anyone coach knows, like, I set 1 and 3 a.m. alarms Thursday and Friday night every week, year round, because I'm panic competitor at 3 a.m. Oh my God, shouldn't I be doing this? I compete in 12 hours. Don't you think I should be? It's like, no, you should be sleeping. It's fucking 3 a.m. Nothing you're going to do is going to improve your look, but everything you're doing right now is going to ruin your look, you know?
Good stuff. Well, anyway, guys, follow Justin on Instagram at Troponin_nutrition. Also has a great website where you can find out about coaching and his nutrition product line, troponinnutrition.com. And so happy that you're still in this game and still relevant in the industry. We've both been around a long time.
Oh yeah, long time. I can't leave. You know, it's like just I've tried a couple times. Bodybuilding is weird because people who don't get it. But at some point, like I remember it was the Arnold Classic in 1989. It was actually before that, but because I bought a Flex magazine with he was Eddie Robinson.
Eddie Robinson,
yeah. Eddie Robinson with he had M6, it was like 87 or 88, and I was like, what the fuck is that? That's awesome. But when you get bit by the iron bug, you just get by. I remember as a kid, we'd go on a vacation. We didn't go on many, but when we did, all I cared about was does the hotel have a gym? I didn't use it. But even walking, that smell of a gym, even I still, if I'm somewhere and I walk into a gym, I'm like, I don't know what it is about but if you get bit by an iron bug, it's an addiction. And I tried to beat it, but I can't.
Yeah. I mean, you must get the same thing. I'm 56 and I still run into people and they'll ask, God, you're still into that bodybuilding stuff? I'm like, yeah. Are you kidding me? It's like, am I still breathing?
Yeah. And I see all the absurdity. I know, like, why there's no functional value to this. I don't know what it is. I do know what it is, because I was just kind of a boring kid. I was like just a middle of the road. You know, I kind of joked in the past, you remember the really cool kids and the really weird kids. I was that kid in the middle that you don't even remember, you don't even know existed. You know, I wasn't great at sports, wasn't anything. But then I learned about bodybuilding, and I finally talked my parents and let me go to a gym. I didn't have a license yet, so they had to drive me. But I remember the first time I did 95 pounds on bench press. I was so, but then I remember being able to do 105, and I was like, because I worked up, I made this happen, and I was like blown. Like, I can just change things. Yeah. And I remember, I don't know why, but I think, you're a kid, blue collar town, you think I knew where I was going to work. I didn't even think about going to college. I was going to, go for the big three. My dad was at GM, or, I'd be UAW, I was going to be a steel worker like everyone, and just didn't think I thought life was just already planned for me. But I was like, man, I can just change things if I don't like it. And maybe it's a silly little thing that other kids grew up actually believing already, but I just could, from that moment on, all I could think about was the next time I'm going to do 110 or what, you know. And for 40 years now, almost, it's been, yeah, what's the next? I can't wait to, you know, now obviously my progression is like, can't wait till I get more flexible or, but there's always something.
Yeah, cool. Well, anyway, it's been awesome talking to you, Justin. I appreciate it very much. And going to be following your work with Brandon and, of course, Carlos. Really excited to see what you do with Carlos. So
me too, yeah.
Guys, thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much. Learned a lot about mathematics, especially today.
Sorry.
No worries. And that's it. So thanks. And thanks, everybody, for watching this Raw Online Report with the one and only Justin Harris. We'll see you